Love is the feeling you must learn to assume. Subconscious mind is really a piece of the one mind, and you and I are living in that mind. This universal subconscious mind is the first cause and the stuff from which all things are made. This thingless thing is really love. When you feel it, truly feel it within as your private inner awareness regarding what you would like to manifest, you gain the power of creation. Recall what St. Francis of Assisi said in one line of his famous prayer, "Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love." You are asking in this prayer to have the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you experience anger, frustration, fear, doubt, worry, stress, and so on, ramp up your love and immerse those negative feelings in a container of pure love. Simply choose to feel good, because every moment of offering love brings your little sliver of subconscious mind into harmony with the all-creating one universal subconscious mind that is defined as love. I trust I've awakened with you the awareness that your feelings play a huge role in your becoming a God-realized manifesting being. Neville states this very clearly, quote, "Denying the evidence of the senses and appropriating the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the way to the realization of your desire," unquote. Apply his wisdom beginning now. It will serve you in ways that you may never have imagined in common hours. And remember that picturing the future without assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is nothing but futile daydreaming. Practice feeling a thought that you have inserted into your imagination. Remember that a feeling is what you feel in your body as you contemplate what it is you wish to manifest or who you would like to become. Close your eyes and experience what that feels like in your body. Work with sensations that are not only your experience of what you are imagining in your body, but are triggers that assist you in moving from a thought to a hardened physical reality. Whatever feelings you are attempting to notice in your body regarding your wishes or desire, bathe it in love, the synonym for God. Imagine what you want. Imagine and feel that love as if you were now in possession of it. Continue doing this using love until your desire actually belongs to you. During this process, remind yourself that the more love, that is, the more God you offer, the sooner desire becomes reality. Look into your mirror fearlessly, saying, "I not only love you, I am love." Acquaint yourself with the subconscious mind. Your piece of subconscious mind acts on what you program into it so that it becomes your automatic mind acting habitually. Decide on a habit that you would like to be automatic. Being generous, for example. Tell yourself, "I am a generous person." Give something away in a spirit of generosity, even if it's only a small coin or a word of encouragement. The more thoughts and actions you practice around your new I am, the more the subconscious mind will react in kind, until eventually it will act in generous ways out of a new habit that you've created. The subconscious mind responds to suggestions. You can reprogram your subconscious mind so that it goes on its accustomed role of autopilot with mental and feeling images from yourself. Talk to this automatically receptive component of yourself, telling it that you are unlimited and that you believe all things are possible. Fill it with images of you being all that you dare to become. Go to a quiet place and feel in your body what it would feel like were those thoughts in your imagination your present reality. The subconscious mind possesses the power to manifest physical reality from thoughts. Every object and circumstance in this world is representative of a mental thought. All that now exists was once imagined. Such is the power of the subconscious mind. But in order to partake of this incredible powerhouse of creation that you are, you must be able and willing to experience within yourself, in your mind, that which you wish to manifest. Thoughts become things when you feel them and are able to impress them upon the subconscious mind, which will then just take over. Here is how Neville describes this phenomenon. This substance is consciousness. It is your imagination which forms this substance into concepts, which concepts are then manifested as circumstances and physical objects. Thus, imagination made your world, unquote. And then his take on the importance of feelings in programming the subconscious mind. He says, quote, "The reality of your assumption has its being in complete independence of objective fact and will clothe itself in flesh if you persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you know that assumptions, if persisted in, harden into facts, then events which seem to the uninitiated mere accidents will be understood by you to be the logical and inevitable effects of your assumption. You have the power to impress upon the subconscious mind any I am of your choosing."
A sense of purpose is at the very top of the pyramid of self-actualization created by Abraham Maslow more than 50 years ago. Through his research, Dr. Maslow discovered that those who feel purposeful are living the highest qualities that humanity has to offer. During the many years I've been in the fields of human development, motivation, and spiritual awareness, this is the topic that more people inquire about than anything else. I'm repeatedly asked questions such as, how do I find my purpose? Does such a thing really exist? Why didn't I know my purpose in life? Well, being on purpose is what the most self-actualized people accomplish on their life journeys. But many individuals feel little sense of purpose and may even doubt that they have a purpose in life in the first place. Feeling purposeful. In response to the question, what should I do with my life? I suggest that there's only one thing you can do with it, since you came into this life with nothing and you'll leave with nothing. You can give it away. You'll feel most on purpose when you're giving your life away by serving others. When you're giving to others, to your planet, and to your source, you're being purposeful. Whatever it is that you choose to do, if you're motivated to be of service to others while being authentically detached from the outcome, you'll feel on purpose, regardless of how much abundance may flow back to you. Allow yourself to be in the feeling place within you that's unconcerned with such things as vocational choice or doing the things you are destined to do. When you're in the service of others or extending kindness beyond your own boundaries, you'll feel connected to your source. You'll feel happy and content knowing that you're doing the right thing. Outside of my chosen occupation, I feel purposeful in a myriad of ways virtually every single day. When I extend assistance to someone in need, when I take a moment to cheer up a disgruntled employee in a restaurant or a store, or when I make a child laugh who sits otherwise ignored in a stroller, or even when I pick up a piece of litter and place it in a trash can, I feel that I'm giving myself away, and as such, I feel purposeful. Essentially what I'm saying here is this. Stay on purpose by expressing the 7 phases of intention, and the details will find you. You'll never, ever again have to ask what your purpose is or how to find it. Your purpose will find you. What thoughts do you have that inhibit you from feeling as if you're on purpose in your life? For instance, if you think that you're separate from your purpose and that you're drifting without direction throughout your life, then that's precisely what you'll attract. Suppose instead that you know this is a purposeful universe where your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are all a part of your free will and are also connected to the power of intention. Suppose that your thoughts of being purposeless and aimless are really a part of your purpose. Just as the thought of losing someone you love makes you love them even more, or an illness makes you treasure your health, supposing that it takes the thought of your unimportance to make you realize your value. When you're awake enough to question your purpose and ask how to connect to it, you're being prodded by the power of intention. The very act of questioning why you're here is an indication that your thoughts are nudging you to reconnect to the field of intention. What's the source of your thoughts about your purpose? Why do you want to feel purposeful? Why is a sense of purpose considered the highest attribute of a fully functioning person? The source of thought is an infinite reservoir of energy and intelligence. In a sense, thoughts about your purpose are really your purpose trying to connect to you. This infinite reservoir of loving, kind, creative, abundant energy grew out of the originating intelligence and is stimulating you to express this universal mind in your own unique way. Your silent inner knowing. Esteemed psychologist and philosopher William James once wrote, quote, "In the dim background of our mind, we know meanwhile what we ought to be doing, but somehow we cannot start. Every moment we expect the spell to break, but it does continue pulse after pulse, and we float with it." Unquote. In my experience as a therapist and as a speaker talking with thousands of people about their lives, I've come to the same conclusion. Somewhere, buried deep within each of us, is a call to purpose. It's not always rational, and it's not always clearly delineated, and sometimes even seemingly absurd, but the knowing is there. There's a silent something within that intends you to express yourself. That something is your soul. It's telling you to listen and connect through love, kindness, and receptivity to this power of intention. That silent inner knowing will never leave you alone. You may try to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, but in honest, alone moments of contemplative communion with yourself, you sense the emptiness waiting for you to fill it with your music. It wants you to take the risks that are involved and to ignore your ego and the egos of others who tell you that an easier, safer, or more secure path is best for you. When you're inspired by a great purpose, everything will begin to work for you. Inspiration comes from moving back in spirit and connecting to the 7 faces of intention. When you feel inspired, what appeared to be risky becomes a path you feel compelled to follow. The risks are gone because you're following your bliss, which is the truth within you. This is really love working in harmony with your intention. Essentially, if you don't feel love, you don't feel the truth, and your truth is all wrapped up in your connection to spirit. This is why inspiration is such an important part of the fulfillment of your intention to live a life on purpose. You may think it's too risky to give up a salary, a pension, job security, or familiar surroundings because of a dim nightlight in your mind that draws you to see why it's turned on. I suggest that there are no risks at all if you pay attention to that light, which is your knowing. Combine your strong knowing with the faith that Spirit will provide, and you acknowledge the power of intention at work. You are a divine, infinite creation, making the choice to be on purpose and to be connected to the power of intention. It all revolves around your being harmoniously connected to your source. Again, it all revolves around your being harmoniously connected to your source. Faith eliminates the risk when you choose to trust that inner knowing about your purpose and become a channel for the power of intention.
You live in a noisy world, constantly bombarded with loud music, sirens, construction equipment, jet airplanes, rumbling trucks, leaf blowers, lawnmowers, and tree cutters. These human-made unnatural sounds invade your senses and keep silence at bay. In fact, you've been raised in a culture that not only eschews silence but is terrified of it. The car radio must always be on, and any pause in conversation is a moment of embarrassment that most people quickly fill with chatter. For many, being alone is a nightmare, and being alone in silence is pure torture. The famous scientist Blaise Pascal once observed, "All man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room, alone." The value of silence. There's a momentary silence in the space between your thoughts that you can become aware of with practice. In this silent space, you'll find the peace that you crave in your daily life. You'll never know that peace if you have no spaces between your thoughts. The average person is said to have 60,000 separate thoughts every day. With so many thoughts, there are almost no gaps. If you could reduce that number by half, you would open up an entire world of possibilities for yourself. For it is when you merge into the silence and become one with it that you reconnect to your source and know the peacefulness that some call God. "Be still and know that I am God," says it so beautifully in the Psalms of the Old Testament. The key words are still and know. Be still actually means silence. Mother Teresa described silence and its relationship to God by saying, "God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, grass grow in silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. We need silence to be able to touch souls." This includes your soul. It's really the space between the notes that makes the music you enjoy so much. Without the spaces, all you would have is one continuous, noisy note. Everything that's created comes out of silence. Your thoughts emerge from the nothingness of silence. Your words come out of this void. Your very essence emerged from emptiness. Those who will supersede us are waiting in the vast void. All creativity requires some stillness. Your sense of inner peace depends on spending some of your life energy in silence to recharge your battery and remove tension and anxiety and reacquaint you with the joy of knowing God and feel closer to all of humanity. Silence reduces fatigue and allows you to experience your own creative juice.
The second word in the Old Testament observation is know. Know, K-N-O-W, refers to making your personal and conscious contact with God. To know God is to banish doubt and become independent of others' definitions and descriptions of God. Instead, you have your own personal knowing. And as Melville reminded us so poignantly, God's one and only voice is silence. Accessing more silence in your life. I urge you to demand more and more time for silence in your life. One of the most effective ways to bring this about is to make meditation a daily practice. And remember, there's no such thing as a bad meditation. Give yourself time to sit quietly alone. At first, your thoughts will take off trying to convince you that this is a waste of time, that you should be out there being productive, and that you've got so many other things to do. Hundreds of other unrelated thoughts will pop up in and out of your mind. But you can weather this thunderstorm of mental protestations by sitting quietly and becoming the observer to all of this inner chatter. Eventually, you'll be able to move to the gaps between your thoughts and notice how peaceful you felt in that silent gap when you emerge from it. Try it right now. Use the Lord's Prayer. Concentrate on the word our and then Father. Try to go into the gap between the two words, our and Father. Then do it again with who and art and in and heaven. Just slip momentarily into the gap and notice how peaceful and exquisite you feel in that gap. I teach a meditation which I describe in detail and guide you through with my voice in a CD cassette called Meditations for Manifesting. This meditation uses the sound of ah as a mantra to keep your thoughts from wandering during the morning meditation. This mantra sound is in virtually all names of the divine. Listen for it, for example, in God, Yahweh, Allah, Krishna, Jehovah, Ra, Bathe. By repeating this mantra sound, you make conscious contact with God. The evening meditation uses the sound of Om, the sound of gratitude for all that has manifested in your life. Repeating the sound of Ah in the morning and Om in the evening for approximately 20 minutes creates an opportunity for you to experience inner peace and success in a way you may never have known before. There are many opportunities to access silence. I try to meditate each time I stop at a red light. With the car stopped and my body inactive, frequently the only thing still moving are the thoughts in my mind. I use those 2 minutes or so at the stoplight to bring my mind into harmony with my inert car and body. I get a wonderful bonus of silence. I probably stop at a red light 20 or 30 times in a day, creating 40 minutes to an hour of silence. And there's always someone behind me to let me know when my time is up by breaking the silence with a honking horn. Meditation not only affects you, it impacts everyone around you. When you're at peace, you radiate a different kind of energy than when you're stressed or depressed. The more peaceful you become, the easier you can deflect the negative energies of those you encounter. This is like having an invisible shield around you that nothing can penetrate unless it's at a higher spiritual energy than your shield. A hostile current is greeted with a smile and an inner knowing that this is not your stuff. A person who attempts to bring you into their misery cannot succeed without your agreement. Your meditation practice keeps you immune. Not only can you deflect the negativity of those around you, but your sense of peace will bring others into harmony with you.
Don't ever believe that people can't change. Don't ever give up on human beings. Some people never do change. There's no question about that. But the potential for changing and dropping really bad habits is within all of us, and it can happen in an instant. For whatever reason, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If he has a readiness to rid himself of this alcoholic rage behavior of his, which she said, other than that, he was a wonderful husband. He was terrific. You know, it was only if he got drunk he would become so abusive that it would be impossible to be around him. She was afraid and so on. And I talked to her a bit about it, and I had her listen to the transformation tapes. And I just got a letter from her yesterday. And she said, I listened to what you said, and he contacted us to see his little boy. And she said, I had made up my mind I was never going to see him, but I said, why don't you come over? She said he has absolutely no desire to have alcohol anymore. Now, this has only been about 3 months now. But she said, we're happy, we're back together again, we're going places as a family, things have never been better. And she said, and he has absolutely no desire to drink and hasn't had anything. And she said, I just can't believe the wonderful change that has taken place. And she said, and the only reason I allowed it is because you had said that to me that afternoon at the pool. I went to get in my car a few months ago, and somehow someone had gotten this card, and it was on the my front seat, and I couldn't believe that it was there. And it said, "I have been all things unholy. If God can work through me, he can work through anyone." And it was signed St. Francis of Assisi. This is a quote from St. Francis of Assisi. I mean, here's one of the people that we revere as a saint saying, "I have been all things unholy." I mean, if a person who has been all things unholy can become a saint, anyone who has been an externally directed person can become an internally directed person. I have a quote. A lady sent this to me in the mail. She said, "I think this will really be important and impactful for you." She said, "This is a rough draft of Leo Tolstoy's will. It was composed on March the 27th in 1885. And here's what he said in his rough draft of his will, Leo Tolstoy, the great novelist, who became very spiritual toward the end of his life. He said, "Furthermore, and in particular, I ask all people near and far not to praise me. I know they will do so because they have done so in my lifetime in the most unseemly ways. But if they want to study my writings, let them look carefully at those passages in them in which I know the power of God spoke through me, and make use of them for their own lives. There have been times when I felt I was becoming the bearer of God's will. I have often been so impure, so full of personal passions, that the light of this truth has been obscured by my own darkness. But nevertheless, this truth has sometimes passed through me, and these have been the happiest moments of my life. God grant that these truths should not have been defiled in passing through me, and that people might feed on them, despite the superficial and impure form which I have given them." I mean, this is from a man who wrote such great, great novels, and then toward the end of his life began to really believe that his work was reflecting of God's will, and he looked back on his earlier life and he's talking about, can people change? I see the same thing in myself. I mean, people listen to me, people revere the work that I have done. They too often treat me as some kind of guru, which I am not. I mean, I feel like St. Francis. I mean, I have been all things unholy. I've lived a life of experimentation and checking things out, and am not proud of every single detail of my life. And yet I feel in the stage that I'm in my life now, that very often, despite all of that, and people come to hear me in churches, and I speak in front of congregations of thousands of people all over the world. And I think, what am I doing in church? These walls are going to crumble. And yet I know that in many ways I'm speaking God's word, God's will. There's nobody out there that can catalog how people change. It isn't a formula. It isn't something that we can put down in paper. People change in moments. People change in instants. And some people change over a gradual period of a lifetime and so on. But a person who is externally directed and doesn't like it and realizes the potential victimization that's in that is, you're a victim of whatever anybody else or anything outside of you is controlling and how it is controlling you, then changing that is just like changing your mind. You just have new thoughts. You just take out the old thoughts and you put in the new. But the first thing you have to do is know that you'll only see it when you believe it. You start with the belief that I do not have to be directed by anything outside of myself, and that God is within me, and the infinite and divine power that makes me human and gives me sustenance as a human being is always there. So I have inner power, I have inner direction, and everything that every great human being has ever done, I can do as well. All things that any human being can do, I can do as well.
And you've got to understand the 7 words, I think, that were most important ever strung together came out of Proverbs in the Old Testament. As you think, so shall you be. As you think, so shall you be. Now, it doesn't say, as you be, so shall you think.
even though that's how most of us run our lives. Those words are really all-out crucial, because once you get it and understand that what you think about is what expands, as you think, so shall you be is what rules the universe. Once you know it, not just believe it, but once you know it, then you start getting real careful about what you think about. Real careful. Because all of those thoughts, all of those doubts are the things that will manifest themselves into your life. Now, it's real simple matter to shift around and begin to pay attention first to the spirit, the invisible side of you, and secondly, to the physical part of you. Most of us don't do that. And it's such a simple matter. I can give you just like a real brief example of how it works. Most of us are as you be, so shall you think kinds of people. So that when things happen to us in the physical world, whatever they may be, we allow our inner world to be affected by them. And so between my office and my home, it's a 17-mile drive that I make every day, twice a day. Now, there was a time when I would get in my car, when I was an as you be, so shall you think kind of person, when I didn't understand the simple words that James Allen wrote in the last century when he said, "Circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him." The circumstances of our life reveal the kinds of choices that we've been making. And I used to get in my car and drive to my home, and depending upon how the traffic went, or whether there was construction, or whether there were delays, or whether there were difficulties, or struggles, or problems, I would then allow my mood at home to be determined by that. And then I learned how to shift that, and how to first begin to visualize in my mind what it is that I wanted this trip to be like for myself. And I do this every day now before I get in the car. I get a picture of how it's going to be in the next half an hour. Very peaceful. It takes me about a minute and a half. 2 or 3 deep breaths. This is going to be a peaceful, wonderful trip home. I'm not going through any yellow lights. The little lady who drives that 1977 Cadillac in the left-hand lane, she's had the seat removed from her car. She sits on the floorboard and you can just see this little head sitting up there. She has signed an oath to drive around aimlessly, delay me. She's in divine order. She's exactly where she belongs. I'm going to bless her today instead of being mad at her. I'm going to understand that this is a perfect universe and that it's all in order and that I don't have to rush. And if there's construction, it's supposed to be there. There's no accidents. There's no accidents. And I'm going to take my time and I'm just going to be very peaceful all the way home. As you think, so shall you be. And then I get in the car, and there she is, sure enough, about 2 miles from the house, and I waved, and I thank you for being here. If I were to try to go around you like I used to, I would probably have a head-on collision, or there's an officer there to give me a traffic ticket or whatever. I bless you for being there. And I get home, and I don't go through any lights, any yellow light. Don't rush, don't change lanes. Very peaceful. And I get home at the same time every day. Same time as I used to, only I'm now allowing myself to understand a very simple premise.
How we perceive something within ourselves, in the environment within us, how we perceive it can literally take the things that are going on inside of us and alter them and change them. Can you imagine that? So it's like a whole new way of thinking.
As you begin to more and more harmonize in this way, what happens is that
you start elevating your thoughts so that the habit of how you think becomes more harmonized rather than a polarity with what you want to attract. It becomes harmonized with it, and it becomes your natural way of how you think all the time.
I believe that success is an inner concept. Inner concept. It is something that is part of your own inner development. When you have it inside of you, and you cultivate that, and that's what I want to try to help parents to do with their children. When you carry that around inside of you, you bring it to every single thing that you do in life. Everything that you do. You bring it to your children. You don't get it from raising them the right way. You don't get it by closing the deal. You bring it to every aspect of the deal. You don't get it by focusing on your commission and how much am I going to get, and if I divide this and if I do that, and always being concerned with your own quotas. You get it by forgetting about your quotas and focusing on your customers. You simply go out and advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live your own kind of life the way you choose, making every day a miracle, and success will chase after you and arrive in your life in amounts greater than you ever anticipated in any present moment of your life. I use the analogy of the bag boys. There are one baggers and two baggers in the world. The one bagger is the bag boy in the store who, when he's bagging your groceries, he's sort of tired and he's sort of got a real bad attitude about what he's doing, and he's only getting a few dollars an hour, and he picks up a loaf of bread and puts it on the bottom and put a few tomatoes down there to keep it nice so that the bread and tomatoes mix nice when the can of grapefruit juice goes on top of it or whatever. And he doesn't give a damn. And he's slow, and his attitude is that there's no one cashier in the world that I cannot make stop and help me bag an order, even if they've only got one item, all right? That's his philosophy. And he kind of goes and does that. Now, you look at that and you say, well, maybe it's just because he's bagging groceries. That's what it is. But it's not. You see, because right in the same store, there's somebody else making the same money, who's got the same benefits, who is like a double bagger, and his philosophy is there's no two cashiers in the world that I cannot keep up with. They'll never have to touch a bag. And then there are a few that are triple baggers. I used to be a triple bagger. I worked for Kroger's through my master's bagging groceries. That's what I got through it and paid for it. I used to make a contest and see if I could get 3 cashiers and bag for all 3 of them and say something pleasant to them and have fun. And the hour would go by like that, and the people would always want to come to my lines, and there was that kind of a fun thing. I looked forward to doing it. Now, the one baggers, 5 years later, they get passed over for a job promotion for manager of a store if they're still there. And they go home and they tell their wife that shouldn't have happened. They passed me over. They're prejudiced. They don't like me because I'm too tall, or I'm too short, or I'm the wrong color, or I'm the wrong size, or I'm a female, or I'm a male, or whatever it is. They've got their reasons, you see. And they go through their whole lives being single baggers. Even up into their retirement years, they're still making excuses and finding fault and blaming the rest of the world for what is. And the double bagger owns a chain of Kroger stores.
Success, again, is an inner process. When you have it inside of you, you're not looking for it. And consequently, you bring success to everything that you do. I've never believed that people who work real hard and do all the right things make a lot of money and then become successful. I think it's the other way around. I think successful people make a lot of money at whatever they do and make a lot of friends and all of that, because the successful person is someone who has it within them, and they bring it to all these different things. And so they're never looking for it, and they're not surprised at how well they do at virtually everything. Goal setting is something that a lot of confusion about. There's nothing wrong with having a goal as long as you don't fall in love with it, and as long as you understand that every step on the way to the achievement of the goal is just as important as every other step, including the one wherein you reach it. That we only get nows, we only get present moments to live, and that to want to be something 5 years from now assumes that you're going to be here then, in this body, in the way that you are living now. And that's a very blatant assumption, that if you always have that 5-year notion, there will come a time when you won't be able to achieve that.
when I said that success is an inner concept, so is happiness, so is love, so is approval. If you think that you're going to find fulfillment if you set a goal out there, and then you work real hard for that goal, and when you get there, you'll finally have it, your life is all this striving. What you need is a psychology of arriving, not striving. You know, you're thinking about what I'm going to do and I'm going to get here. Meantime, every one of these days are your life. This is all you get. So the goals, while there's nothing wrong with goals at all, it's like every step along the way is just as important to savor as arriving here. And if you're only goal-oriented and only striving, you're only about halfway up the ladder of no-limit people. You are always going to suffer from the disease of more if you only have goals to arrive at in the future. Because this becomes your life, this striving. And when you get here, you don't know what to do with this. You don't know how to handle what you've got. So then you upgrade your goal. You say, all right, I'll have 200,000 in the bank instead of 100,000. And now your life becomes more struggling, more suffering, more trying to get there. And you get here, and then all of a sudden you look around and you're an old person. And you say, what happened to my life?
You see, the more you operate from goal setting in the sense of repairing deficiencies, the more your life becomes one of striving. Your life becomes a striving. And when and when you arrive at the place where you want it to be, you don't know how to be there because your whole life has been striving. If it's a week from Thursday, you're looking toward whatever it is, that party or the bank account that you're going to now have the amount of money that you wanted in it, and you finally get there after all the struggling, and then Thursday arrives, you don't know how to deal with that because your whole life has been in anticipation of, and so when you get there, you suffer from this disease called more, and I've got to get more of that.
In reading the aphorisms of Patanjali, he was talking, now you have to remember, we're talking about before the Middle Ages, which were called the Dark Ages. And here was Patanjali writing about the ability to be able to do absolutely miraculous things. The ability to be able to be in more than one place at the same time. The ability to be able to be in the presence of another human being and raise your energy to such a level that you could literally, by your presence alone, just heal that person. The ability to be able to transcend things like diseases. The ability to be able to have the gift of fish and loaves. To just live at such a level of consciousness that anything you placed your attention on instantaneously, you had the capacity and the power to be able to make that realization for you. The book is called How to Know God. Now, it's not called How to Know About God. It's not called How to Believe in God. It's called How to Know God. And How to Know God means making conscious contact with God. It's the only way you can know anything. So here are the 5 aphorisms. The first is called, the central act of ignorance is false identification. The central act of ignorance is called false identification. What does Patanjali mean by false identification? And what does he mean by ignorance? Ignorance is not to be assumed to mean that you are uninformed. It means that you are identifying yourself as a human being with your body and your possessions and this material world. And the central act of that ignorance is the identification falsely with this world of the changing. But beyond the world of the changing is the changeless world. And once you start to identify yourself there and know that this is who you are, know it, like you're listening right now and you're watching, and the energy that is coming into you is coming through your eyes and ears and senses. And it is only your eyes and your ears and your senses that take this energy and twist it into something called evil or problems. It comes into your eyes, these energies, and into your ears, if it could be examined just before it hits your eyes, and just before it reaches your ears, and we could examine it very carefully, you would find that the scientists would say, no, there's no problems in that energy. There's no evil in that energy. Nope, it's just energy. It's just a frequency. It's vibrating at a certain speed. But as soon as it hits your senses and you begin to interpret it, problems begin to show up in your life. But the energy itself contains no problems. It's just energy. That's proper identification according to Patanjali. That's the first aphorism. The second aphorism sounds like this. The mind of the truly illumined, said Patanjali, is calm, because the peace of God within all things is known, even within the appearance of misery and disease. Even within the appearance of misery and disease. The mind of the truly illumined is always calm. And the mind of the truly illumined understands that the peace of God is in all things. You are in this world, but what? You are not of this world. That is not who you are. You are not of this world, even though you're in it. So you're filling out the forms, you send in your money to the IRS, and you stop at the red lights, and you obey the laws, and you follow the rules, that is, most of them, which seem to make sense, and the ones that don't, you're able to ignore, which you have to, otherwise we'll never have any growth. The third aphorism is quite simple, and it's one that's most troubling to many people in the West. Patanjali said, sin is non-existent. Sin is non-existent. There are only obstacles to one's ultimate union with God. You do not sin when you behave toward another person in a harmful way, when you steal from another person, when you violate any of the commandments or whatever. You have not sinned. You have created an obstacle to your union with God. But you see, the reason we don't want to put sin in there, according to Patanjali, is because it creates shame and guilt. Shame computes the absolute lowest in whether you're going to be strong or weak in your life. Shame is the lowest frequency emotion that is possible. It only computes at 25 on a scale of 1 to 1,000. The fourth aphorism that leads us into a spiritual solution to every problem sounds like this. And these last two are the ones that I absolutely resonate to and love the most. The person who is steadfast in his abstention from falsehood has the power to obtain for himself and others the fruits of good deeds without having to perform the deeds themselves. Steadfast in abstaining from means that you never waver and you never have thoughts of falsehood, that is, identifying yourself as a material being rather than a spiritual being. And when you become steadfast in that, when you say to someone, God blesses you, they are blessed by your presence when you have that kind of consciousness. And you present yourself to someone and you are absolutely steadfast in abstention from falsehood. And in the presence of such a person, healing takes place. And blessing takes place. And the fifth aphorism, my favorite of all, says, when a person is steadfast in his abstention from harming others, then all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in his or her presence. So when you become steadfast in your abstention from ever having a thought of harm directing at other people, and that's how you walk through the world, butterflies will land on your shoulder. Birds will not be afraid of you. Little dogs, or even vicious dogs, will become domesticated by being in your presence. All living creatures, babies, will goo-goo and come to you. You know people like this, don't you? And what you'll do is set into motion these dormant forces, which will collaborate with you because you're in spirit rather than in form.
Here are some of the signposts of a new direction. Your ego is less insistent on having attention placed on it. There was a time when I could dominate every conversation, no matter where I was, no matter who I was with, and if I was with my wife or whatever. And I could be glib and verbal and use quotations and talk and get people to gather around and endlessly take the spotlight. Today I find myself hardly ever talking. I just love to sit back and watch and listen and observe and notice. Secondly, doing less, not more. Letting go and letting God becomes easier for you. Practicing non-interference. Boy, when I was writing Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life and living that part of the Tao, I remember reading one of the verses and thinking, it says, great sages do nothing, and because they do nothing, they get so much more done. And I just couldn't wrap my head around that, or my consciousness around that I could do less and get more done. I mean, we've grown up in a world where you have to go out and do more in order to get more. It says in the Tao, great sages accomplish great things by thinking small rather than thinking big. That a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And the great sage just thinks of the single step and where they are. You get to a place where you're not trying so hard, but you're not failing at anything. You're just producing results, and you're not willing to judge the results, and it gets easier trying less. You begin to shun the spotlight. You begin to practice what the Tao taught me to practice, which is radical humility. Not taking credit, giving other people credit, not needing to have other people tell you how wonderful you are. Just simply practicing what the ocean teaches us. Stay low and let everything come to you. Unity begins to replace separation. Conflict then is eliminated. Remember, the mind at war with itself can never know God. Because knowing God means knowing oneness. And oneness means nothing to be in conflict with. You cannot be in conflict when you have oneness. There's only one. And we begin to see ourselves as connected to everything. Now, also on this voyage of two, and I just have to speak a few moments about this, it is what I call the fall. Virtually every spiritual advance that I've ever made in my life has been preceded by a fall of some kind or another. And I think you can expect a fall. And when you're in one, when you're in a low point, when you're struggling, the Tao says that built into all misfortune is good fortune. And built into all good fortune is misfortune. So that when you're in a place of misfortune, low, your relationship isn't working, the finances aren't coming, the news about your body, the medical diagnosis, things aren't the way you want them to be, all of the falls. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had a wonderful quote. She said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. So the idea really isn't to try to eliminate the storms of your life. The idea is to learn how to sing in the rain, how to dance in the storms, and be willing to go into the storm. And the final thing about this journey back, I talked about it in the film, is called the quantum moments. And these are moments in our lives that really shift us, and they almost always come after a fall. So you have the fall, that as you have one of these falls, what you are doing is you are generating energy to propel yourself over the bar. If you remember in the film, I spoke about the night that I had one of the most shameful nights of my life, when I required my wife and our 5 little children, we had 5 children in 8 years, and they had closed the bar at the restaurant because someone the night before had served someone underage, and they wouldn't give me a beer with my meal, and I made everybody in the family be inconvenienced and get up and go to another restaurant because I was upset because I couldn't have my beer. Now that's a jerk. That's shameful behavior. It's hard for me to even admit it, but I'm better than I used to be. Now I'd only make them go 2 blocks instead of 3. No, I wouldn't do that. And that morning, after that fall provided me with the energy. I began to think about myself. And what was I doing? How long has it been, Wayne, since you've gone without having a beer in the evening? I couldn't think of a day in the previous 2 decades. And what are you doing making your wife, who's had 5 children with you in 8 years, move? And you know what it means to move little children like that? You know, with all of the things that you have to take and put them in the cars and the seat belts and all of that, and none of it mattered to me. But that fall allowed me probably to be alive today. Because if I would have kept drinking the way I was, I wouldn't be alive today. It was going to kill me because alcohol's like sugar. I mean, and it's loaded with sugar, by the way. So these falls, when you have one, start looking for the energy and start seeing what it can bring to you as you move back.
Let's now examine the elements that most of us agree define the essence of our Creator, along with how they can help us sensibly approach Him. 1. God is love. We came from love, and we desire to return to that heaven while still on earth. I repeat Emerson's appropriate observation that love is our highest word and the synonym for God. In other words, if we dwell in love, we dwell in God. If God is love and cannot be anything other than what God is, and we wish to have a dialogue with God, then it seems to me that we come to our source in love, or we're wasting our time. So in the private, quiet, prayerful moments of asking for God's help, don't ask Him to help defeat others in any way. Rather, pray, Dear God, make me an instrument of Thy love. I want to be like You. I have forgiven them, and I have forgiven myself. And remember that there can be no forgiveness without love. And without love, there can be no way of being heard by our source. 2. God is peace. One of the most quoted verses in the Old Testament, which may also be my favorite biblical offering, is this: Be still and know that I am God. So a corollary of this might then be agitated and turbulent, and you will never know God. Along with praying or communing with our source with peace in our heart, we must be still. This means taking time to get quiet before meditating, and also monitoring our breathing. As we exhale, we can train ourselves to let go of all of our non-peaceful thoughts. And as we inhale, we can breathe in spirit. We can keep reminding ourselves that all of the non-peace that's in the world is not of God. It's of ego. Then we can ask to be helped back to His peace. This approach will attract the assistance we're requesting. It's all about matching up the vibrational energy of our desire for peace with thoughts and behaviors that are consistently peaceful with those desires. 3. God is all-inclusive. We won't be heard by or receive assistance from our source if we're touting our separateness from our fellow humans. You see, when we seek special individual favors from God, or even when we seek to converse with our source from this perspective, we're once again living an illusion. If God were to acknowledge our belief in separation, perfect oneness wouldn't and couldn't exist. It's impossible for a source that creates everyone, and therefore is in everyone, to even have a dialogue with someone who's harboring ideas of their specialness or separation from everyone else. In conversing with our source, as always, we strive to be more like it. So we need to see ourselves as connected to everyone in the universe as we enter into prayer. Then we can ask for guidance and assistance in summoning the all-inclusive Spirit. Make me an instrument of You. Allow me to see You in everyone I encounter. Help me to see myself in others and to extend first to them what I aspire to myself. I've noticed that this is how You are, and I wish to be just like You. The key is getting past your ego-based idea of separation and instead seeing yourself as a part of the oneness of all. As Thomas Aquinas put it so succinctly, True peace consists in not separating ourselves from the will of God. 4. God is abundance. As St. Paul once said, God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance. So why is there so much apparent shortage in the world, including people starving and living in poverty, and millions of folks having the persistent problem of too much month left at the end of the money? Well, what I can say for certain is that God is not to blame. There's more than enough to go around. After all, we came from a place that knows nothing of deprivation, and we arrived on a planet that has the capacity to grow the food and slake the thirst of every one of its inhabitants many times over. As a species, we human beings have brought the ideas of deficiency and depletions of God's gifts on ourselves, largely by taking very ungodlike actions. God serves all of us, but our greed has made us forget others and focus only on ourselves. As a people and as individuals, we've brought lack to our lives, and we can only fix this deficiency by becoming more like our always serving, endlessly abundant spiritual source. The answers to the resolution of poverty and scarcity are readily available to us, and they'd be resolved tomorrow if we remembered that we're all one on this planet. We all share the same origins, and we all end up back in the same non-place where we began. When we return to spirit in our heart, our governments will align with this truth, and our leaders will emerge from in-spirit consciousness. And 5, God is well-being. Spirit never has a fever and knows nothing of illness. So in my humble opinion, it makes no sense to pray or engage in a discourse with God from a perspective of asking to be healed, unless, that is, we have a firm understanding of what we mean by the word heal. If we mean to overcome an illness or infirmity, then I feel that we're again violating the truism that nothing can be what it isn't, including God. On the other hand, if we use the word heal to mean reconnecting to our source of well-being, then we're open to the potential of receiving assistance to overcome any infirmity. And that's how I use the word. I never asked God to help me to get over a feeling of sickness. Even when I had a minor heart attack 5 years ago, I asked to be made an instrument of God's well-being. I acknowledged that my body had taken on non-well-being, be it from my lifestyle, diet, and habits, or the toxins I breathe in and out, whatever. It was not of God, it was of me in this physical world, and I prayed to be reunited to a stream of well-being. I knew that I was a piece of God, and it was just as easy for him to heal a cut on my finger as it was to restore my heart to a healthy state. Since I knew that God's healing power was within me, I just needed to help my body remember this.